The mission of the Peach Lab is to test policies and interventions to promote healthy eating habits. And so we take an approach in my research that I call strategic science. And the goal of strategic science is to try to identify policymakers and policy influencers and really bring them into the conversation when we're crafting research questions. So what we want to do in the lab is ensure that our research is timely and it's going to have direct application to questions that policymakers care about. So we've taken the strategic science approach with respect to food labeling policies, and there's been a lot of policy action in that space. So for example, we've worked with policymakers on the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act because there's a provision in that act that requires chain restaurants to post calorie information. Some of the research that we did actually informed the design of that policy and some of the requirements around what sort of information needs to be given to the public when they're looking at a restaurant menu. We've also done some work at the state level, so different states and also cities have considered bills to put warning labels on sugary drinks. There's not actually a lot of data on how those labels influence consumers, and so we've done some research on the California bill specifically to try to understand what language should be put on those labels and what impact might they have. And then we've worked with advocates in that state to inform the language that's going to be required in some of these bills that are being proposed. And then finally, we've done some work locally here in Philadelphia. We have been in partnership with the Philadelphia Department of Public Health, and the city's been very interested, and a bill was just introduced to put warning labels to identify high sodium items on restaurant menus. And so we also did some research to understand what's the optimal design of those kinds of labels, what color should they be, what language should be on the labels, and how might they influence consumers. And then through that partnership, we were able to communicate those results to policymakers, and that actually informed the current bill that's proposed and being considered right now in the city. I think if we want evidence-based food policies, it's really critical to take this strategic science approach where we're not just communicating our research to policymakers, but we're really engaging them in the conversation and getting their input into the kinds of research questions that we're asking. And in the Peach Lab, we're doing that in food labeling, but we're doing it across a range of issues, including food marketing, beverage taxes, and portion limit policies.